Now, I have just a little bit more to say, but before I do that, I want to back up and be reminded that I did, for some reason in this script, overlook one award for presidential founders. So let's take a time out and welcome up to the stage Dave Heebner, class of '67, and Bonnie, to accept my apologies because they are new members of the presidential founders. They are the recipients of this little box that's been sitting here. And I thank Warner for reminding me that somehow we failed to acknowledge them. So come on up for a minute. This is doubly bad because Dave Heebner was the chair of the search committee that recruited me to be the 15th president of WPI, and I got to know him when he kept calling me persistently about this opportunity, and he kept saying things like, you know, I really don't understand much about higher education. I'm just an engineer, and, you know, but people tell me you're a pretty good guy, so we'd really like to talk to you, and so on. Turns out I was talking to a 4-star general who had a major command in Desert Storm and a highly distinguished career serving this country in the United States Army, who's become a great friend, one of our real leaders on the Board of Trustees, and Dave and Bonnie are just wonderful people whose company Kathy and I are privileged to enjoy on numerous occasions. Here's what has been written about David. David was recently promoted to Executive Vice President and Group Executive of the Marine Systems Group at General Dynamics Corporation. He served in the Army, as I said, for more than 30 years and is a retired lieutenant general. Dave is the recipient of many of the Army's most distinguished service and combat medals. He and Bonnie have directed much of their philanthropy at WPI to the endowed scholarship that bears their name. And it's an honor to welcome them as presidential founders and to congratulate them. Thank you very much. Didn't get the picture. Oh, didn't get the picture? Great, thanks. I think my editing job was a little too comprehensive here. Dave did say that was a nice recovery, so I appreciate that. He always had a word of confidence in me. Now let me just take a couple minutes and do a little bit of a deeper look into this issue of our educational philosophy. As I said, this has been a very trying time for education, not just about the economic calamity, but because I think education very much is in a state of crisis as an enterprise in this country. We have a long way to go in public education in K through 12 to get back on track, and many of our institutions of higher education are struggling, I think, as well. I will assure you that our motto, theory and practice, continues to be our North Star and to guide us very well at WPI. It offers a brilliant alternative to this current malaise to which I just referred. There's too much emphasis in education these days on one size fits all. Let's give all the students the same test. Let's give all the students the same standards. Let's give all the students the same textbook. And of course, the problem is, as those of you who follow Howard Gardner and educational philosophers of that ilk understand, there are many different kinds of intelligence. In fact, Gardner does an interesting taxonomy for us. He talks about the intelligence of musical ability, the intelligence of mathematics and logical ability, the intelligence of ability with language, the intelligence of ability with interpersonal relationships, how you deal with others, and then the intelligence about intrapersonal intelligence, how well you know yourself and understand what you are all about and what you can do about all of that. And I add that to a recent book from Charles Murray, the man who brought us the bell curve a few years ago, pretty critical of the state of education. The latest book that he produced is entitled Real Education, 4 Simple Truths about Bringing American Schools Back to Reality. And he states them pretty simply. The first one is that ability varies among students. Seems obvious, but it's not something that our practices reflect all that much understanding of. The second is an interesting point, that whatever you're measuring, whatever quality or ability, half of us are below average. That's hard for more than half of us to accept, I know. Third, he feels too many people are going to college. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do think it leads us back to that mistake of one size fits all. If a high school curriculum is only about sending kids to college, there are a certain number of young people that aren't going to be well served necessarily by the uniform approach to whatever that is. Finally, he says, and this is, I think, pretty profound, that much of our future depends on how we educate the academically gifted. And he has the courage to say that at a time when so much of our interest is focused on bringing up the bottom end of the performers in the school system. We aren't challenging even the middle range of abilities enough, but those high ability kids that could really be pushed and really produced are being, I think, very much shortchanged by much of the educational system. Now, you put all that together, and you remember what the famous engineer Norm Augustine said, and I quote, "Motivation almost always beats talent." And you come around to the conclusion the WPI and the WPI plan has this and has had this figured out pretty well, because it realizes that students come here with different abilities, with different kinds of intelligence, and as you put these young people together in project teams, as you challenge them to come together and fill in the missing elements and capitalize on each other's relative strengths and focus on the success of the team rather than the success of the individual, you make a place for those differing abilities and those different types of intelligence. It's a learning environment at WPI that I think really is a model for the nation and responds very much to these very real concerns that I've just been discussing with you. I myself put it something like this. You put all this together and you gain a deeper insight into why the WPI philosophy and style of education is so effective. It facilitates, by the work of project teams, demanding professors and mentors, and the simple striving for excellence, the optimizing of learning opportunities according to the varying abilities and types of intelligence among our students, working together in a spirit of cooperative enterprise, putting their knowledge to work in tangible, important, and rewarding ways. This is the spirit in which Nietzsche said education is liberation, and in which Bill Grogan said there is a better way to educate, let it be the WPI plan. Bill, thank you again. All hail WPI.